Okay, excuse me. This is the intro to the recording for the fifth day of the Feast of Tabernacles 2018. We'll be broadcasting live on Facebook Live Sabbath service page, and this recording will go into the archives on Vimeo, maybe on YouTube, and no, not YouTube today. And we'll give the dates, September 28, 2018. We'll give the Hebrew date and all that when we go live. Let's get going. Let's see. We're going to just hit it and go. As soon as I get a green light, we'll say hello and we'll be on. Chag Sameach, happy Feast of Tabernacles 2018 for this fifth day of the Feast of Tabernacles this year, brethren. Today it's a Friday, or the sixth day of the week, we could say it is Friday on the Roman calendar, September 28, 2018. If we use a reference to the way God will reference things from the Bible and the Hebrew calendar during the millennium, it's the sixth day of the week. It's a prep day. Even though it's Feast of Tabernacles, this is a prep day, the sixth day of the week, before the regular weekly Sabbath. And during the millennium, we will have weekly Sabbaths, and that means we will have preparation days. We'll have prep days during the Sabbath. And today is one of those. So this is a day that you may not want to get too carried away with festival-type activities during the feast, allowing a little time for both mental and otherwise preparation for the regular weekly Sabbath. Maybe you've made a mess in your room or something and you just want to spend a little extra time preparing to have things nice, neat, very orderly on the Sabbath. Maybe you've sat in services, ran around and enjoyed the amusement park near where you may be attending. Or even if you're staying home, you may have gone to the extra fancy restaurants during this feast and fellowshipped in ways that you've just left either a mess around you, or you haven't done as much of your own personal Bible study or prayer as you might have liked to have done. And so today, a day for prepping for the weekly Sabbath. Again, we'll have weekly Sabbaths during the millennium. Now, at this point in time, we are 700 years symbolically into the Feast of Tabernacles on this fifth day. Jesus Christ has been ruling now for 700 years. Things should be pretty well cleaned up at this point in time, 700 years into the millennium, from all the damage that man did during this present evil world, and especially in the very last years just ahead of us, as the Great Tribulation comes upon the world, when the fifth seal opens up, for 3.5 years of the greatest, biggest, most mega, hugest trouble on the face of the earth since the beginning of the world to this time that's coming up upon us. That in the King James rendered the mega trouble that's coming, that Jesus Christ referred to in Matthew 24, verses 20, 21, 22, 21 especially, is rendered in the King James Version as Great Tribulation, something that has a very, very special connotation and meaning semantically to us. But where we are right now in 2018, during this Feast of Tabernacles this year, again, we're on the regular weekly prep day, the sixth day of the week before a regular weekly Sabbath that's falling within the Feast of Tabernacles. And then, brethren, as soon as the weekly Sabbath is over, we go into a prep day on the first day of the week, on Sunday, this feast. Day after tomorrow, we go into another prep day, a prep day before an annual holy day, before an annual Sabbath. Because Sunday will be the prep day for what begins Sunday evening at sunset, the last great day. And as Christ referred to it as the last great day of the feast, it's kind of considered part of the feast. Even in in Leviticus, even the three times, the three seasons in the year. This fall season that includes the Day of Trumpets, Atonement, Feast of Tabernacles, and Last Great Day is all referred to generically as the season of the Feast of Tabernacles. And yet, the Last Great Day is a separate feast all of its own. It's feast number, let's see, as feast go, it's feast number 8. No, it's feast number 7, because the second feast, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, even though it has 2 holy days in it, it's only referred to as one feast. So though Passover has no holy day in it, we call it God calls it a festival, a feast. He names it as one of the 7 feasts he references in Leviticus 26. Well, let me see, just a moment here. I may be citing that wrong. Let me lean over behind the screen, grab my Bible by a few chapters. This Leviticus 26 is ringing me as the blessing and cursing chapter. Yeah, Leviticus 23 is what I meant to say, where God mentions the 7 feasts of the eternal. Passover is one of those feasts, but Passover is not a holy day. And yet, now you see there are 7 feasts, and there are 7 holy days. But Passover is not one of those 7 holy days. It's the most solemn, festival of all the 7 festivals. And yet it's not a holy day. You can work on the Passover day. But then there are 7 festivals. So some people scratch their head. Well, wait a minute. If there's 7 feasts and one of them is Passover, wouldn't there be 8 holy days? No, Passover is not one of the holy days. Well, that only leaves 6 festivals that have holy days in them. So wouldn't there only be 6 holy days? No, because the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the second festival of the year, has 2 holy days in it. As you think back, the first day of unleavened bread and the last day of unleavened bread are both holy days. In the fall season, the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles is a holy day. And even though the Feast of Tabernacles, technically as the Feast of Tabernacles itself, ends after 7 days, the last great day tacks onto the end of it, adjoins it, abuts it, so that it's as if it were the 8th day of the feast, as Christ made a reference to it, and it's right there with us at the feast. When the feast ends this Sunday evening at sunset, and this year, well, that's interesting. Now, wait a second. Yeah, but the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, technically, the 7th day of the Feast of Tabernacles, is not a holy day, as is the last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And so, Sunday is a prep day. It's the last day of the feast, but it's not a holy day, and it's a prep day for the last great day, the 8th day of the feast. Just so you get that technical difference. And so today is a prep day. Then we have the weekly Sabbath tomorrow. Then there's a prep day for the annual Sabbath that begins Sunday evening, sunset, and Monday. And then toward the end of Monday, I know a lot of people that have traveled will start a journey back home. And those of you that are home, well, you're already home. And, and there's a lot you can use that time well for a little extra prayer, a little extra study, staying focused for what the day means. And, brethren, where are we now? We got to zoom right into where we left off yesterday, because we still got a lot to go in the behind the work film for 1985, and I think we may dovetail into Feast of Tabernacles 1981. I'm not sure. I'm going to roll my introduction from last year to this when we played it on this same day, 5th day of the Feast of Tabernacles last year. And being a year, most of us forget a lot of things. This feast film includes a lot of the things that help us to know how much God did through one man who he beat down. First of all, he beat him down and then raised him up to be the man through whom he would build and draw and be the spokesman on the earth in the human form for drawing and calling and choosing those of us who are called to this and chosen for the spring harvest. And God did that through one man, his end-time apostle. And this video shows the thing that you use as criteria for determining an apostle, one with the fruits of an apostle. And even Mr. Armstrong himself announced amazement at all the things that God did through him, but that God did. He said, God did it, brethren, not me. He said, but it was what the doors got open were a struggle for a human being, for Mr. Armstrong as a human, except that God gave him extra strength, for which I'm thankful to know we can ask for that, like Isaiah did. I've had to ask for that during this Feast of Tabernacles 2018. God's allowed me to suffer, probably because of my own misdoings of overdoing, digging trenches, putting concrete blocks on the roof, trying to stave off the ultimate repair, and just physical things. I kind of overdid what one person should do physically. I think I just stressed and strained everything, as some of us that I've talked to understand it. I think it's not necessarily a stroke coming on. I keep my cholesterol in check and all, but who knows? But I'm doing the things that get bad cholesterol out, like taking a lot of extra apple cider vinegar, and I'm eating foods that help do that. Brussels sprouts and broccoli, and I'm getting some advice and I'm following it as much as I can. But during this feast, I have to admit I have succumbed to eating fine European chocolates. Tom Williams, thank you. Oh no, Ray, thank you for reminding me about the fine European chocolates. I went ahead and bought some more yesterday. I said, look, this is the feast. I only allow myself to do certain things like that during the feast because God says spend your second tithe on things that you lust for through the year, that you hold yourself back from through the year. He says enjoy them during the feast. I mean, as long as they're legitimate and doable and not contrary to God's law, of course. But things that in discipline we might do all year, the Feast of Tabernacles, we can have the chocolate and eat more. And then, you wouldn't want to eat that much all the time because you might put on weight and become like a blimp. But during the feast, we can do it somewhat. And then repent of all that later. I mean, turn it around later. And because God tells us to rejoice and enjoy during this feast. Now, I don't know about you, brethren, but these feast films have brought a lot of joy, sometimes a few tears of joy, to see the amazing things that we once had that we don't presently have while we're scattered, while we were truly one body unscattered and also undivided, in the sense that today we're not only scattered, but many ministers have caused us to be divided, something God doesn't like, and announced through his apostle that the naming of these different groups should have never occurred. We should not be calling ourselves members of this blankety blank or that blankety blank Church of God group. Somebody say, Stephen, I wish you'd stop saying that because I like to be a member over here. Well, you need to learn something, brethren. Mr. Armstrong announced to us we were not even to say we were members of the Radio Church of God or the later name change to the Worldwide Church of God. So why should you be naming yourself a member of a splinter group over here or over there that divides the body of Jesus Christ? I know some of you don't like that, but you need to get on your knees, fast and pray about it and say, God, is Gilbreath telling us straight? Are you upset about this? Is this division? And then wait for his answer. You're going to get an absolute profound yes. If you're fasting, praying about it, really want to know and really submit your request to God for an answer from him, he's going to let you know in your own mind, yes. And as long as you don't ignore it and run away from it and get yourself drunk under ministries that compromise the truths that God gave us through his end-time apostle. And this feast film today is going to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Herbert W. Armstrong was God's end-time apostle with the tremendous fruits of an apostle given to him by the great God himself. Let's go to it. We got to hurry into it. It's a long one to let it finish up within our 2-hour time limit. And then we will be doing a weekly Friday night, even though it's during the feast. It'll probably be a little shorter than normal. We're going to do a Bible study Friday night, after the Sabbath, after the sun goes down. We'll be doing a Bible study on cogtv.org, on the Sabbath.tv channel that will stream live, God willing, on Facebook Live, Sabbath service page. Tonight, Friday night Bible study. So we'll be back for that. So let's launch into and we'll cover things that happened this week, 2018, and just bring us up to live date. But let's go to this feast film from 1985. We were in the middle of it yesterday when we ran out of time, and I said we'd pick it up today. So that's where we are. I'm picking it up from a video of it that I played last year, if it's going to play here. Why does it seem like it's hung up? Oh no, okay, actually it's rolling. I just got the volume down, and I've got an introduction to it that I think probably is running now. Let's tune in and see what's happening. Here we go, brethren.
Mr. Armstrong has enjoyed a warm friendship with Thailand's hard-working King Bhumibol and Queen Sirikit. He has been impressed with their outstanding example of service to their people. Since 1971, the Ambassador Foundation has aided their majesties in projects to encourage the hill tribes to replace the opium poppy with a more profitable and less destructive cash crop. In a visit to Thailand in 1984, Mr. Armstrong was invited by Queen Sirikit to fly with her in the royal helicopter to a remote hill tribe settlement close to the border between Thailand and Burma. The Queen showed Mr. Armstrong the progress that had been made in helping these backward people develop a more settled and prosperous standard of living. Knowing Her Majesty's dedication to helping Thailand's poor while preserving their heritage, Mr. Armstrong assisted her in promoting a greater knowledge of fine quality Thai handicrafts. The Ambassador Television Studios produced an hour-long documentary which told the story of King Bhumibol and Queen Sirikit's total dedication to their people. Mr. Armstrong personally presented their majesties with this videotape production. The royal family has honored Mr. Armstrong several times, decorating him in recognition of his long friendship and service to the Thai nation.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
A highlight in the long and productive relationship came in March 1985 when Her Majesty accepted Mr. Armstrong's invitation to visit Ambassador College for several days. Mr. Armstrong escorted the Queen on a personal tour of the college's beautiful Pasadena campus. Queen Sirikit also attended a number of banquets and receptions in her honor. Present were many state and local dignitaries.
So I think Mr. Armstrong and my husband have the same goal, the common goal, that is the harmony, the world harmony, and better understanding between people in all over the world.
In conjunction with her visit, the largest display of ancient and modern Thai treasures ever exhibited outside of Thailand was showcased in the lobby of the Hall of Administration. Later, on the stage of the Ambassador Auditorium, Mr. Armstrong introduced Queen Sirikit to an audience of distinguished businessmen and leaders of the local community.
Ladies and gentlemen, and before I introduce Her Majesty, the Queen of Thailand, I'd like to say a few things about the royal family of Thailand. Their Majesties, the King and Queen of Thailand, have devoted their lives to the welfare of their people, to serving them. They go out among them personally. I spent one day with Her Majesty, the Queen, among one of their nomad tribes in the north. And their Majesties are interested in going up and working with them. So now it's my very great pleasure to introduce a very dear and affectionate friend, Her Majesty, Queen Sirikit of Thailand.
I'm very happy today to visit the home base of Mr. Armstrong, a gentleman whom I consider to be my true personal friend, as well as a friend of all men of goodwill in this world. Because of his wisdom, far-sightedness, and humanitarian heart, he knows it is meaningless to talk about security, democracy, and international cooperation when a large number of people still hardly have enough to keep body and soul together. I know that his financial aid to various projects has been extremely generous, but I think that he is most appreciated because of the spiritual impact he makes. To those who meet him, he is the symbol of the warm-hearted citizen of the advanced countries who is willing to understand, give encouragement, and lend a helping hand when needed.
If the people of the world are ever to reach their full potential, it is important that the educated in all nations learn to cooperate and serve those less fortunate than themselves. The United Nations has been the most successful instrument for international cooperation so far. In the closing days of World War II, representatives of 51 nations met in San Francisco to lay the foundations of an organization that they hoped would once and for all provide a forum where nations could work out their differences at the conference table rather than on the battlefield. It is in many ways the most effective vehicle that man has ever devised to improve communication between nations. But in spite of dedicated and sincere effort, the United Nations has been unable to keep the peace. In June 1985, representatives of the world's nations gathered once again in San Francisco to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the United Nations. Delegates reviewed 40 years of achievement and considered the future of the World Organization. Mr. Armstrong had reported the 1945 conference for The Plain Truth. Today, he has met with more heads of state and leaders of government than any other man alive. He was afforded a position of honor during the days of discussion and debate.
If you asked me, what does the United Nations need most? More power or more money or both? My answer would be, the United Nations needs above all the love, the understanding, the interest, and the support of the peoples of all nations.
The hardest thing for human beings to do is to set lofty goals and work hard for them, while recognizing that they may never be fully realized. Yet this is what the United Nations is really all about. The failure of the United Nations to meet all its lofty aims is no cause for despair. We should continue to set high goals that inspire us to work harder and to persevere.
It is said, according to United Nations studies, that we've had 154 conventional wars since 1945, fought on 71 countries, on the ground of 71 countries, with over 20 million people dead. It continues, even at this moment in time, at a measured loss of life of 1,000 people a day, 30,000 a month, ad infinitum. What would we do without the United Nations Forum on Arms Control and Disarmament? It is entirely possible that without it, the doomsday clock would already have struck midnight. Perhaps we can meet here again in San Francisco, 40 years from now, in the year 2025. And in the interim, because of the tireless work which is done, sanity may have intervened, and we will then be at a conference discussing a convention on the control of the proliferation of plowshares and pruning hooks.
As one who has devotedly sat on the sidelines of the Security Council for nearly 40 years, perhaps I may be forgiven for saying that there are moments, or have been moments and still are, when I feel that only an invasion from outer space is likely to reintroduce to the Security Council that spirit of unanimity and collegiate responsibility which the authors of the Charter were talking about. I sincerely hope I may be proved to be wrong.
UNESCO, the UN has...
Only 3 of the original signers of the United Nations Charter are alive today. They were invited to attend the commemoration conference and speak to the delegates.
We who came together in those early days of the UN know that the most and certainly the best we could do at that time was to build the foundation. We can pride ourselves that the foundation is still intact. But the structure of a genuine peace has yet to be built. This is the continuing challenge for all those who understand that the human race cannot survive in a condition of world anarchy.
It's not enough for the young generation to say we do not want a nuclear war. That's obvious. But if there is to be peacekeeping, there must be peacemaking. And the United Nations needs a tremendous expansion in the way in which solutions are worked out and brought forward.
When we look ahead to the years of peace, we find that distressingly little is being contemplated to be done in this conference in the realm of the mind and spirit. It is to the spirit and mind of man, to his ideas and his attitudes, that we must devote considerable attention if the peace is going to be truly won. Unless we secure the right conditions for spiritual and intellectual health, and unless we determine the right positive ideas for which man should live, I am afraid all our work in this conference may prove to have been in vain. Have this particular...
After his speech, Dr. Malik privately discussed with Mr. Armstrong what he considered to be the missing dimension in the philosophy of the United Nations representatives.
There is an old wisdom in the Middle East with which we are fully acquainted. You know, history began in the Middle East. I mean, the history of the Western world began in the Middle East, in Mesopotamia and Egypt, on the shores of Lebanon, the Phoenicians, then in Jerusalem, and so forth. One of the basic things that you find everybody believes in, everybody without exception, in every village in Lebanon, in every village in Egypt, everywhere. One of the fundamental things which nobody talks about here, because now you have, with all respect for you, now you have outgrown this old wisdom of the Middle East. One of the important things that we talk about is the devil. I'd like to see one man speak of the devil. Now, the devil has penetrated human hearts everywhere. In your heart, sir, and in mine, the devil is contending with Christ all the time. He's contending with him in all sorts of ways. I can reveal them to you at length. So we believe that the devil is at work in the midst of all these events, and while the devil is at work and has not yet been completely conquered, vanquished, we will never have peace. We will never have peace. You think the United Nations is going to bring about peace so long as the devil is around? We had 1,000 people today at lunch, more than 1,000, maybe 1,500. I was sitting down and thinking all the time, Mr. Armstrong, all the time, what is going on in the minds of these people? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure the devil was not there in the minds of these people. I'm not sure at all. Okay. With all their schemes and ideas and emotions and aspirations and plannings and all kinds of things. The devil is at work. So this is a thing that if you ask anybody, any peasant in Lebanon or in Egypt will tell you, of course the devil is at work. The devil is at work. But here, the devil has so much conquered you that you don't talk about him. You wouldn't dare talk about him. I didn't say conquered you. This is the wrong way of putting it. But he is so clever that one way with which he acts is to conceal himself.
Today, few people realize that this is Satan's world. As Satan's rule of this earth draws nearer to the end, it becomes increasingly important for an ambassador of the kingdom of God to reach many nations with the warning of tribulation and the promise of peace. There is a special urgency in reaching the nations of the industrial world, for the prophecies show that it is these nations that will trigger the crisis that catapults the human race into the final trial. Since the end of the Second World War, Europe has known 40 years of peace, one of the longest periods without war in this continent's stormy history. After the destruction of the war, the nations have rebuilt. Behind the scenes, patient, cautious men have been working for future prosperity and the fulfillment of an old dream, a United States of Europe. Because of Europe's critical role in the fulfillment of prophecy, Mr. Armstrong has kept in contact with these architects of a united Europe. Such a man is Dr. Otto von Habsburg, son of the last Austrian emperor and a leading member of the European Parliament.
Dr. von Habsburg,
yeah.
I wonder if you can bring me up to date a little bit on the progress of the unification
Thank
project
you very
here
much.
in Europe.
I will tell you, we have, of course, made a major breakthrough with the enlargement. With the accession of Spain and Portugal, this was a major breakthrough. You see, I have a little bit directly to do with it, since I'm the first vice president of the mixed committee between the European Parliament and the Spanish Cortes. So I was in the negotiations.
When Europe starts uniting, which will be the strongest body, the European Parliament or what will be the strongest?
I hope it will be balanced. I think there is a fair chance of it being balanced. You see, I wouldn't be happy about any of the powers to being too strong. They should all be checking each other, because if a power runs away with too much of influence, it's always dangerous. You know, it's like in a state, it's the same thing. So checks and balances are something very important to keep freedom.
Leaders like Dr. von Habsburg plan for a united Europe that will be a powerful force for peace and democracy in the world. The birthplace of European democracy was ancient Greece. The Apostle Paul once proclaimed the true gospel to the superstitious inhabitants of Athens. 2,000 years later, Mr. Armstrong confronted political leaders and businessmen in the Athens Rotary Club with the truth about the future of Europe.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It certainly is a great honor to be able to speak to the Rotary Club here in Athens, Greece, one of the most ancient cities in the world and the home of education, scholarship, and culture, one of the oldest cultural cities in the world. I come to you as an unofficial ambassador for peace. Armies do not bring peace to a country. We have not learned the way to peace. Yesterday, I was having a meeting with some of the officials of your country, and there was considerable discussion about the plans for the unification of Europe. And as one of your officials said, world peace depends upon European unification. I want to tell you something more about the coming unification of Europe. We not only have language barriers between the nations and nationalism, different aspirations, and all that sort of thing, and differences which have to be overcome, but many of the political leaders feel that they do not want to be church-dominated, and yet they're not going to be able to get together without the cohesiveness of church domination and the church bringing them all together. You see, even the church is divided between East and West. I can tell you, however, that I fully believe that rift is going to be healed. And I fully believe that unification will be unexpectedly and suddenly achieved, and the whole world is going to be stunned and astounded when it is announced that there is, in the continent of Europe, a new political unification, a nation as great or greater than the Soviet Union or the United States of America.
Many listen respectfully, but they do not believe. The old nations of Europe are tired of war. They seek unification only for peaceful purposes. It is a bold dream, but the prophecies show that the union of the nations in Europe will result not in peace, but in the most terrible instrument of destruction the world has ever seen. The course of a united Europe was charted long ago in the days of the prophet Daniel, when the destiny of this world passed into the hands of 4 world-ruling empires. Daniel had seen 4 beasts representing those empires.
Then I wished to know the truth about the 4th beast. Thus he said, "The 4th beast shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom."
And so God revealed that the 4th beast represented the 4th empire, which would continue in one form or another to the time of the end. Babylon fell to the Persian Empire in the 6th century BC. The Persians ruled the world for 2 centuries, until 333 BC, when the armies of Alexander destroyed Persia's power. This 3rd empire, like unto a leopard, endured for nearly 3 more centuries before falling to the might of the Romans. And so, in 31 BC, the 4th beast was born as an empire, a power that would influence the affairs of the world until the second coming of Jesus Christ rescues mankind from its clutches. It was in the heyday of the first stage of the Roman Empire that Jesus Christ revealed the final details of its role in world history. On the Mediterranean island of Patmos, the elderly apostle John received the visions recorded in the Apocalypse or Book of Revelation. He saw in vivid detail a cataclysmic war that would take place at the end of the age. Against this backdrop of mayhem and destruction, John saw once again the savage beasts of Daniel's vision, now combined into one all-consuming monster.
Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? And who is able to make war with him?"
Here, then, is a beast of fearsome proportion. The majesty of Babylon, the relentless force of Persia, the speed of the 4-headed leopard of Greece, all combined to produce the formidable military might of the Romans. The 10 horns represent 10 governments to be formed from this beast, for it would arise again and again, casting its terrible shadow across nearly 1,600 years of history. The old Roman Empire fell in AD 476. 3 kingdoms supplanted it. the Vandals, the Heruli, and the Ostrogoths. Then the Emperor Justinian restored the power of imperial Rome in AD 554, as symbolized by the fourth horn of the beast. In AD 800, Charlemagne was crowned by the Pope on Christmas Day as a successor to the throne of Rome. In 962, the sixth horn became known as the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, when Pope John XII crowned Otto the Great. Then in 1530, the Habsburg dynasty reached the apex of its power when the Pope crowned Charles V as the Holy Roman Emperor. This dynastic seventh horn lasted until it was overthrown by Napoleon, who, seizing the crown from the hands of the Pope, crowned himself emperor. Napoleon's short reign ended in 1814, a date recognized in history as the end of a government that lasted 1,260 years from the restoration of the Roman Empire in the West by Justinian. But the beast was not dead. By 1870, Garibaldi's efforts led to a united Italy, thus beginning a chain of events that resulted in the formation of the ninth government to arise out of the Roman Empire. In 1923, the fascists under Mussolini had already come to power in Rome. Meanwhile, an attempt by the Nazi Party to take over the German government was thwarted. But 10 years later, Hitler did rise to power, and his Third Reich was soon to lunge out at Europe and hold it captive for 5 nightmare years. Hitler drew inspiration from ancient Rome. Even his architecture was inspired by the styles of the Caesars. Before this ninth fearsome horn of the Roman Empire had been crushed in the ruins of fascism and the Third Reich, much of Europe had been reduced to rubble. "40 years later, there is little left to remind the visitors of the ravages of war. A place where Hitler once goaded his people into frenzy is now a park where old people stroll and children play. Close by, the review stand at Zeppelin Field, where the legions of the Third Reich paraded before their Fuhrer, is now in ruins.
Hände die es in Deutschland gibt.
But it is not the end. The terrible beast must appear once more for a final rampage of destruction. The prophecies show that 10 nations, or group of nations in Europe, will join their economic, military, and political forces. It will be a fragile union, iron mixed with miry clay. But old rivalries and quarrels will be suspended for a time. Held together by a common need and a common faith, these nations will become a third superpower. It may at first seem to be a peaceful union, but the Bible reveals the true nature that lies beneath the surface. Goaded into action, the beast will wreak havoc on the earth. The armies of the beast will lash out, laying waste the modern-day descendants of the ancient house of Israel. Then the beast turns in its rage on the nations of the east. Finally, powerful armies gather to fight a climactic battle for Jerusalem. So great is the fury, so awful the weapons, that humanity teeters on the brink of destroying all flesh, man and animals alike, from off the earth. Only the intervention of God can save humanity, and God does intervene. Jesus Christ returns to earth in power and glory, stopping the fighting, subduing the adversaries, rescuing his chosen people from cruel tribulation. Then this world, this civilization that has known so much misery and destruction, will be over. Jesus Christ will establish his kingdom on the earth, which will lead the world into 1,000 years of peace. Leaders of nations will come to this kingdom, eager to be taught the way that leads to peace. They will come to a tranquil land, developing in happiness and prosperity, living in harmony with God and his laws. Many then will remember that in the last days of that past civilization, an ambassador of this kingdom came to them with the advance news of a peaceful world tomorrow.
And I'm here to announce to you tonight that God is going to let this world come crashing down. But it's going to be replaced with a far better world that'll be filled with love and with peace and joy and happiness and with greater production by far than anything we've dreamed of having yet, and where everybody will be well educated and rightly and properly educated. I feel the responsibility, and a voice has to cry out in this wilderness of religious confusion, this wilderness of a Babylon of ideas, and everybody having different ideas and everybody against everybody else. Someone has to cry out with that message and announce what is going to happen, as certain as the sun is going to rise and set tomorrow. Now, I know you haven't heard anything said like this before, but I have been sent here by that eternal living Creator God, the God over all races and all people and all nations, to tell you the truth, which missionaries have failed to tell you, which religions have not known and have not been able to tell you, which the colleges and universities do not teach, which science doesn't even understand. But you have been told tonight.
All right, brethren, let me come back out here with you. I think this is where last year, let me get this volume down so we don't get double audio. I think this is where last year I was playing this from a video from last year, where I believe it ended faster than I thought it would this morning. So I've got my coat off because it's even though we're in the fall and things are cooling down a little bit, it still gets hot up here in the studio. Now I'm staying even though I'm staying home to be able to do these broadcasts, and some of the fellows that are planning to come here, we had to delay their coming, so they're very likely, I sent them some funds to help get them to the bus depot where they'll take a bus down here. I've sent them the train funds. They'll probably be coming next week. So I had a change of plans, and it was kind of good. I did get some of our laptops so that we could take them on a trip and transmit from anywhere. I may even want to try a test with that later. But I stayed home, except what I do is now just to have a tabernacle, I go out and stay in this trailer that's been empty for a couple of years. It's back of my home, which, you know, the fellows that come are going to stay in that once they get here. But I used it for a tabernacle, this feast. And so I was out there this morning, and it's out there with the animals, with donkey and goat. They usually stay right near the door when they know somebody's living in that trailer when I'm living in there, because I'm their feeder, so they especially stay near the door when I'm in there. And that's fine. One of them kind of knocked on my door last night just as I got in bed, as if to say, how about bringing us some extra food? This is a feast. You know, you're eating more. You should feed us more. I don't know. The donkey was banging its head on my door for a little while, and that's okay. I slept well out there. We had a little rain last night. I was thinking about how if I were in my home, it would have been coming down on my face in my bed, because there's a leak right there, and I've got tubs and stuff to catch that leaking right now. But all right, brother, I'm just talking because I get caught a little bit off guard with that stopping faster than I thought it was going to stop this morning. Let me just check, if you don't mind. I'm just going to roll this in the background and take a look and see if, yeah, sure enough, that's where I came out of the film last year and said a few words. Now, I think maybe we were supposed to go on into 1981 Feast of Tabernacles film. Let me scoot that ahead. Feast set. And see what's on the rest of this video. I'll see if I can get that to work. Okay, I guess that's just all right, you know, where I was talking right there, I was talking about the place that God mentions in Daniel 11, verse 41. That's a tri-regional area east of the Jordan River. You see the Dead Sea there in the middle, the waterway that's in between Israel and Jordan. The Jordan River runs down from that, and all on the east side of that Jordan River is that tri-regional area that God says is the only place on the face of the earth protected from the beast during the Great Tribulation. The entranceway to that tri-regional area, which is Ammon in the north, Moab in the middle, and Edom in the south. And at the southernmost point of Edom is the entranceway to that entire wilderness area. Well, now, Ammon is the capital of Jordan, but that's the top border. And the entranceway to all that area, though, is Petra. And the rock walls of Petra that Mr. Armstrong saw when he visited there, and many of you visited there, I visited there, those great rock walls reminded Mr. Armstrong of the gelled up walls of the Red Sea when ancient Israel was being chased by Pharaoh's army, and God, through Moses raising his staff, gelled up the waters, made them iced them up so that ancient Israel could go through there. And then what happened is Pharaoh decides, well, if they can go through there, we can go through there, and we're going to grab them guys and take them back. But he didn't realize that was actually dynamically happening as a protection at the hand of the great God, and God caused that those gelled up waters to begin to ungel, to melt, let a little water enough come through to muddy up things so that the chariot wheels of the army of Pharaoh would be become stuck. And then God let while they're stuck, that gave ancient Israel time to get out on the other end of it, and then God let the whole thing come crashing down on Pharaoh's army, and they drowned. As the song from Exodus 15 goes, they all drowned in the sea there. All right, I was trying to find something else I could put up on the screen. I know what we've got here. Yeah, there we go. Mr. Armstrong in the background. Brethren, I think we'll cut short this morning. Ray, I'm sorry I don't have a hymn queued up here. I may have had one on the end of that other tape. We've got some things we can improve here that I hope we can improve, especially as I have some onboard help hopefully coming. And I got the whole 128 hymns ready to be redone. I've done a lot of them, but that hard drive, I don't have access to it. But we're going to cut short today because we're coming, especially because this is the prep day, and we're coming back tonight for a Bible study. So, brethren, I'm going to thank you for joining us for this 5th day of the Feast of Tabernacles. We saw a very special ending of the 1985 feast film, Behind the Work. And I'm going to wish you a good 5th day, prep day, as we get ready for the regular weekly Sabbath during this Feast of Tabernacles. And you know what to do on a prep day. And, of course, it is feast also. So if you have a little opportunity for a little extra fellowship of some kind, you can still go out and eat a scrumptious, wonderful, delightful, nice meal and still get a little prep work done for regular weekly Sabbath. And, again, we'll be back tonight, Bible study, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. So just figure it from wherever you are. And of course it'll be in the archive too for those that are watching with us who normally tune in with us from the United Kingdom. Well, we've got video archive that you can get to from our archive video menu tab on cogtv.org and also right here on Facebook Live, the Sabbath service page. Just scroll down. I think Facebook keeps them there for a little while. Of course, you can go back and watch the archive from our live stream right on Facebook Live Sabbath service page later. So those of you in the UK, and we'll do something, we'll pay their sponsor fees to make sure it stays there so you can get it later. For those that Bible study would be 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in the United Kingdom, but we'll make it so that it's there early Sabbath morning. Because of our time difference between the United States and the United Kingdom. Brethren, again, thanks for joining me. 5th day of Feast of Tabernacles 2018. Again, we'll be back tonight for Bible study, 7:30 p.m. Central Time, and we'll plan to be here tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m., our usual time for weekly Sabbath services. And we'll be doing it tomorrow as weekly Sabbath service and the 6th day tomorrow of the Feast of Tabernacles 2018. Chag Sameach. Catch you later, brethren. Thank you for joining us today, everybody.